Okay, guys, welcome to the first ever Ground Zero with VTT podcast. We have a very special guest joining us today for our first ever show. But first, I'd like to introduce you to the team that will be smashing it out in our time here on the show. So without delay, I'd like to introduce Josh, the professor, and Billy, the caveman. And finally, this is happening after all these years about talking and putting on this show. What do you reckon, fellas?
Yeah, man. So good.
About time. So, as I mentioned, we do have a special guest joining us, and we're pumped to have him here. It's someone that will rival Hammy and Villy in the shoe department, no doubt. It's Joe DeFranco. Just a quick wrap on Joe DeFranco. He's an OG in the fitness industry. During the past 2+ decades, he's done it all as a strength coach. He's worked with athletes from nearly every major sporting team, including players from every single one of the 32 NFL teams, UFC fighters, WWE superstars, and a stack of successful Olympians, just to name a few. His cutting-edge training techniques have been featured on ESPN, HBO, NFL and the WWE Networks, and in the New York Times best-selling book, The 4-Hour Body, written by the one and only Tim Ferris. Now, as a gym owner, Joe turned a 500 square foot storage facility into an athletic performance mecca and a globally recognized brand. His success revolutionized the garage warehouse industry, as he proved you don't need a large multi-million-dollar gym in order to get world-class results. Franco's Gym, America's 10 best gyms by Men's Health magazine, one of the coolest gyms in America by Shape magazine. He's a creator, along with Jim Smith, of the world-renowned CPPS, called by Muscle Fitness magazine the best curriculum for trainers we've ever seen. Joe, welcome, mate. It's an honor to have you here.
Thanks for having me, guys. That was quite the intro. I appreciate it. I got to live up to the hype.
Man, you know what?
Is it all true?
Yeah. If you stick around long enough, I guess you could develop a long intro.
Mate, obviously we want to rack your brain and get some of your knowledge to us and to our listeners. But before we get in the gritty stuff, do you mind giving us a little bit of an insight into your background, like how you got to where you are and how much hard work you've had to put in to get your brand to the world-renowned brand that it is?
Yeah, I mean, the short version of my story is I grew up obsessed with football, American football. That was my sport. Yeah. Since as soon as I could walk, I had a football in my hand. Loved watching it on TV. Couldn't wait to start playing. Nice. And I began playing football at 7 years old. It was always my dream to play in the NFL. And excelled at that sport through grade school, through high school. Did really well. Yeah. Had a bunch of Division I scholarship offers in high school.
Nice.
But then one morning, literally overnight, I went to bed one night. I woke up the next morning with just a severe pain in my back and shooting down my leg. And that pain never went away for 4.5 years. I went to doctors, had surgeries, experimental procedures, injections. Like, I think I had over 100 experimental procedures done on my back, 7 or 8 MRIs, CAT scans, X-rays, like you name it. They couldn't figure out what it was.
Yeah.
And 4.5 years after the pain started, they discovered I had a tumor growing inside my sacrum. And that's why it wasn't showing up on a lot of these tests and X-rays and MRIs and stuff. And so 4.5 years, 4 back surgeries, 100 procedures later, they were finally able to remove the tumor. But the damage that was done in the process, plus the time that went by, pretty much destroyed my dreams of playing in the NFL. Yeah. So that's when, after crying myself to sleep for a couple weeks or months and kind of fallen into a bit of a depression and not knowing what I wanted to do and feeling like my passion was taken away, I realized that, I had developed a passion for training. Just as passionate as I was about playing football, I developed that same level of passion for the weight room and training for football, and just realized that hadn't been taken away from me. And instead of feeling sorry for myself, I said, you know what? If I'm not going to be able to play in the NFL, the next best thing, I was in college at the time, I said, I'm going to continue to study exercise science. I'm going to learn every single thing I can about human anatomy, biomechanics, sports performance, and I'm going to apply this and help other athletes achieve the goals that I couldn't. And the rest is history, as they say. I got a degree in exercise science, continued to travel all over the country, all over the world, meeting with different strength coaches. I read every book, every article that you could get your hands on. Got an internship at a sports performance facility, worked there for 5 years from the time I was 21 to 26. And then when I turned 27, I started my own business, and that was the famous Storage Closet Gym, which was a literal storage closet. It was a closet in an existing health club. The gym that I worked out in when I was in college, kind of like my hometown gym, I went to the owner. I asked him if I could clear out the back storage closet and throw some paint on the walls and pay rent to train people out of that little room. And he thought I was crazy, but he said, hey, the room's just collecting dust. Like, if you're willing to pay me, for a closet, a literal 500 square foot storage closet, I'll make some money off that room. And that's where I started. I started with 3 high school kids, and they got incredible results. They told a few friends. 3 kids turned into 6. Then it turned into a couple small groups. And after 3 years, I had NFL football players in that storage closet, college kids, Olympic athletes, pro baseball players. I ended up growing out of that, and then eventually opened up my own real warehouse gym, something that I could call my own, and then expanded over the next 15 to 16 years, and that brings us to today. I'm now in the industry close to 25 years, still going at it.
So you're just doing like individual programs? Are you doing any group training at all there, Joe?
Excuse me. Right now, I'm focusing mostly on our certification, and I'm spending more time training other trainers. At this point in my career, I'm 45 years old now. I'm trying to make the biggest impact and reach the most people, and I realized the best way to do that is working with guys like you and people who own gyms and college and high school strength coaches, because each time we could affect one of those coaches, they might have 50 to 100 to 500 athletes that they're dealing with. So I've kind of switched my business model a little bit to now I focus more on training trainers and coaches. Education. But I still spend 2 or 3 hours a day working with individual clients. I have a few NFL players, a couple MMA fighters. I'm still working closely with the WWE, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, and we help run their developmental program for the wrestlers that are aspiring to make it to their main roster and make it onto the big stage. So I think I'll always, my true passion is training. I still love training. Yep. I just don't do it 15 hours a day anymore. I do it about 2 to 3 hours. Yeah. And the rest of the time, is working on our certification and online programming.
Yeah.
And our DeFranco Insider, we have a membership community, so things of that nature.
Yeah. Your story sounds similar to Billy's, actually, about the setbacks that you had with your sporting when you were younger. So,
What did Billy have?
So I was playing semi-professional footy, so rugby league, and probably 2 years ago, the same time now, got told to stop playing. So that was due to some genetic heart condition that I have, which is dilated
myopathy.
Yeah, cardiomyopathy. Dilated cardiomyopathy.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I got hit with that, so that kind of was a setback for me. But at the same time, similar to your story, is had to make something out of it, and I got my head in the door early in the fitness industry. So and that's where I am now. So I'm kind of putting everything towards it, into that fitness industry, and hopefully impact some other trainers as well, to all professional athletes to always have a plan B, other than always having
that is I think that's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
I talk a lot in business. I haven't when I dove into the storage closet and started training athletes, I did not have a plan B. I just had it in my mindset that I was not going to fail, and I would die trying if I would do anything and everything to make it work. But I feel like it's different in pro sports. It is so, because even if you make it, like I've worked with hundreds of pro athletes, the men and women who you would say quote unquote made it. Yeah. But even them, like in the NFL, even if you make it, the average career is only 2.5 to 3 years.
Yeah,
so
wow.
You're going to have to do something when your career is over. It's not the be all end all. Like you have to be the 1% of the 1% that makes it to the professional sports level, and then make a living out of that to where you never have to work again a day in your life. I mean, that's like a 1 in a billion type of thing. So I think it's a little different when it comes to sport, yet you need a plan B. Business, I can't say, it's probably good to have a plan B, but I didn't have one. If I wasn't doing this, I always joke and say, I know a lot about a little. I don't know anything about any other industry. I'm like super tunnel vision focused. I know a lot about a very little bit in my niche in the fitness industry. Otherwise, don't ask me to do anything else.
I think that's why you got the reputation you do, but Joe. So, hat off to you, mate.
I appreciate that. We don't even pump our own gas in New Jersey. We have people doing that for us.
Really?
They don't trust us to put our own gas in our car.
Man, you wouldn't want to pump gas at the moment. Wouldn't it be freezing cold over there, wouldn't it? Be in the middle of winter?
No, right now I'm in my house in my basement, and it's we have an unfinished basement in my house, so there's no heat down here right now. We're in the process of putting a home gym in, and it's about 35 degrees in here right now. It's cold, so I don't want to be outside pumping my own gas either.
Joe, we just had a couple of quick questions to ask you, mate. If that was okay. And I suppose for myself, I remember reading some of your emails. Like Dad said, it must have been 15 years ago. I remember reading some of your emails and stuff like that, and then obviously we've followed you online and stuff as well. So I suppose my question is we've got headquarters here with one of the gyms, and then we've also got a second one which is probably about maybe 15 or say 25 kilometres away from here, but we're really trying to develop a brand and a method, and I think you've done that amazingly well. But my question was, do you think it's important to develop and promote our methods based around performance for strong brand recognition online and so on? So our 4 pillars of health are training, nutrition, recovery and mindset. And I was just wondering, like, do you think it's something we should like really promote and have strong methods and guidelines based around those 4 principles?
Yeah, I mean, to me, they're tried and true. You can't argue those 4 things. But when it comes to, so that I wouldn't change. I think you're on the right track, and that's amazing. We need more good information online. There's certainly no shortage of information, but the good information is what we are severely lacking. So I love hearing those principles and those topics. I think the key though is, I've seen so many, every day I talk to brilliant strength coaches and personal trainers that nobody knows online, because there's so much other noise with all these, social media influencers who are spending all this money in marketing, and they're posting 3-4 times a day. Like, they're occupying everybody's attention, so that the good information is kind of getting lost in the shuffle. So I think it's important to not only put out amazing information and truthful, helpful information, but I found, very early that I started like my newsletter back in 2002. And back then it was way easier to get recognized because not as many people were doing those type of things. But I think what helped me was I was extremely consistent. Like, I did not go a week without posting information, without getting in people's faces. Like, if you say you remember some of those emails, they came out every single Friday like clockwork. I think it was a good 6 or 7 years straight that I did not miss. I used to call it the Ask Joe Q&A. I didn't miss an Ask Joe for 6 or 7 years. Like, you knew Friday morning, you check your email. For you guys, it might have been Saturday or a different day, but there was a steady day that you knew you were getting information from Joe DeFranco. And I think today that's even more important. Like, you can't post something online once every 10 days, once a month. Like, you need to be in people's face, posting consistently. And then that information needs to be quality, helpful information. Every time I put a piece of content out, I always think, what is this doing for the reader? Like, how is it helping them? I think too many people in our industry, they just try to stroke their own ego and, they want to brag and say, oh, look at this pro athlete I trained, or, here's a picture of me without my shirt on. Look at my 6-pack abs. And that's all well and good every now and then. But if you want to develop we talk about like raving fans, like people who really know, like, and trust you and are going to go to you for information and buy products from you and hire you. Like, you need to get them to know, like, and trust you. And you do that by consistently putting out kick-ass, helpful information. And if you have any unique aspects of your business, that certainly helps. Like, even my story, while it sucked going through it, and like I said, I fell into a depression for almost a year. But that a lot of people, my story resonates with them, because there's a lot of people who have had their dream, taken away. Like Billy just said, hey, I had a similar situation. Like, I had this condition and I couldn't do what I loved anymore. So I started in this industry. So when you probably heard my story, that kind of helped me stand out to you. So if you have anything unique about your story, make sure you're telling that as well, because anything unique about yourself, your business, your team, that's gonna help, because there's a lot of noise out there in social media.
There are, like, as business owners and as even just as coaches or managers, there's so many hats that you wear in the gym. Like, you're not just you're not just a coach, you're a psychologist sometimes with people, you know, you're a counselor, you need to do the marketing, you're a cleaner. There's so many things to it. Who taught you, Joe? Like who does your marketing and your editing, even of your Instagram stuff? I see some, you know, clever little tactics that you use on Instagram.
Well, you know, it's funny. My Instagram stuff I actually do myself. Like in the beginning, and I think this is most people, unless you just happen to, you know, come from, if you grew up with money. Like I wasn't someone who grew up with a ton of money. I mean, we certainly weren't poor, but I grew up in a very middle class family. I had a lot of support, but it wasn't like, you know, hey, Dad, I want to open up a gym. Can I have $100,000 or, you know, $200,000? Or like I started with nothing. That's why I started in a storage closet with only 3 pieces of equipment. I didn't have those resources. So for me, it was always, everything was learning on the job. Like I was taking out the garbage, training people all day, like you said, being a psychiatrist to more clients than I probably was a trainer to during those early years. And then realizing you do need to market your business. So coming up with t-shirt designs and, you know, putting out an email newsletter. Like I did everything myself in the beginning. Then as you grow and you get a little more success, that's where it's important to hire people and find people that are just as passionate about you. Like I think we're all coaches at heart. Yeah, do we have to do a little marketing on the side? Do we have to do a little of this, do a little of that? Yes, but if you can't spread yourself thin and be doing 20 different things a day. As I've gotten older, I've learned, do what you do best. And for me, that's training, coaching, doing calls like this. While I do my own Instagram, like the marketing of things, we hire other people for that. Or I still am around a lot of high school and college kids, and they are much more tech savvy than I am. So any question I have with this iPhone, I'll reach out to the younger kids and say, hey, how do you make an Instagram video? Like I didn't know how to do any of that in the beginning. So I always start within. I've trained enough people where within my clientele, there's usually someone who knows more about marketing than me, someone, you know, who knows more about psychology than me, someone who knows more about nutrition than me, and you build from there. Definitely. But in the beginning, you have to do it all yourself. And then it's have enough success, and you are going to have to grind. It is not a 9-to-5 job, as I'm sure you guys know. Like it's approaching midnight here for me, and I'm not saying that for anyone to like feel sorry for me. I'm saying it because I enjoy doing stuff like this, and even at 45 years old, I still wake up about 6 a.m, and almost every waking hour, I'm doing something work related, whether I'm training athletes, writing programs, doing my own podcast, someone else's podcast, traveling to clients' houses. Like I'm still putting in 12, 15-hour days on the regular, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't love what I do. So I know I totally got off on a tangent, but I think the important message is don't get into this industry unless you love it, because there's not as much money as you think, and the hours are way longer than you think.
100%. 100%. So Joe, you've been around for like over 25 years, and in like 25 years, no doubt, like the strength and conditioning type of facility that you have has been around for 25 years and will be around for another 100 or more years, because you can't really duplicate what you do or go away from it and expect fantastic results. So I know like there have been trends that come through the fitness industry, and one that I've seen lately is group training facilities that are doing HIIT and kind of strength or interval weight kind of training that are now doing it in altitude. I'm not sure if you're familiar with or you got much knowledge around altitude training, but I just want to get your thoughts on that for the general public and for doing it consistently and on a regular basis.
Well, I have had a lot of MMA fighters who do travel, so they are able to train in altitude. And I'm certainly, I wouldn't consider myself an expert in that aspect of our field, but I do know that it does work, and you will get in better shape, and it is helpful. Like, all you have to do, everyone I've ever known, like around in our country, you go to Colorado for the first time, and people say, "Man, I took a walk and I was like sucking wind. I can't believe how bad I felt." But once I was there for a few days or a few weeks, I felt so much better. That would make sense. Then training under those type of conditions, your body would adapt, and that could be beneficial. Now, I always looked at it this way: is that beneficial, and there's a reason why so many athletes choose to train that way and have succeeded. But like every other kind of trend, it's certainly not necessary. Like, I truly believe you could get just as good of results, if not better, training anywhere. You know, because you could look at it, while it is generally speaking, you would say it's harder, it's more taxing on your body, and that's why it is helpful. I know, like, for a period of time, I had guys coming into my gym wearing like these different training masks and trying to duplicate that, and why I was against it in the beginning. And now I talk to guys like Brian McKenzie who convinced me that there are some benefits, just as far as like resisted breathing and different breathing drills you could do with those masks on that can be very beneficial. But what I saw was these guys would wear these masks to the gym, and they wouldn't even be able to get through 5 minutes of the warm-up. And these are guys that would normally go through a 15-20 minute dynamic warm-up, you know, kick ass through the workout. And I just saw like some guys relying on the mask, like they were showing up to my gym later in the off season because they thought they could put this mask on and get in better shape faster. And that did not happen. All it did was they weren't able to do as much work because they had this device on that was hindering their ability to breathe. So now they started training with me later, they got less work done, and that's when I quickly like shut that down and said no more showing up, you know, a month later than usual because you think this mask is going to be a magic like gimmick, you know, this magic tool. Like most things, you still have to put the freaking work in. So can it be beneficial? Absolutely. But it is not the be all end all. My quick advice on this podcast, and I know this could be a topic, you know, that you could bring on experts and talk all day on it, but just a quick takeaway would be, don't think you can rely on these types of devices, or I'm just going to fly someplace and train in altitude for a week and, you know, it's magic. I'm going to be in the best shape of my life. You still got to put the work in, and it still takes time.
So if they're not, sorry, Josh. So if they're not pushing as hard, if you're doing weights and you're trying to, you know, work hypertrophy or get stronger, you're not obviously going to be able to push as hard with that, and you're probably not going to get the benefits. True. So
and that's what I saw. And if you have time, again, it's, you know, it's basically like resisted breathing is how I think of it. And if you had the time and then you built up to the ability to be able to go through a full workout and handle the weights that you were previously handling and train at a pace that you could previously train at without the mask, or, you know, when you weren't in altitude, then that could be very beneficial. But and this is one of those things I talk a lot about, theory versus real world, what happens, and you guys know this, like if you work in a university setting or you have your own gym and you're working with real athletes, you see what they do and how they interpret things. So you could read an article that is 100% convincing on these training masks work and you'll get in better shape and all this stuff. But the reality is what I saw was a big trend of what I just spoke about. I had NFL guys showing up, instead of coming to my gym in like February or March, they were showing up in June with a freaking gas mask on, thinking like, oh, this is the magic tool. I could train for a month leading up until training camp as opposed to 3 or 4, and I'm going to get in just as good a shape. And it actually backfired on them because, like I said, they were able to do less, and we only had a month. So that's when I shut that down in my gym real quick, and I said, no more relying on any kind of gimmick, any type of outside device. Like, it's hard, consistent work. Just like I talked about with putting content online, the underlying theme is usually nothing beats hard, consistent, smart work.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we spoke about it quite a few times, Joe. We're thinking that, like, if we stick to the tried and true scientifically proven methods of progressive overload, like periodization, and then training, nutrition, recovery, and mindset, they're bang for your buck principles that everyone can take on board and get more benefit from than altitude training or wearing a mask.
Exactly. The training, nutrition, recovery mindset, we could have this conversation 100 years from now, and I promise you, nobody's arguing any of those things. Whereas the training mask, there'll be 1,000 studies for it and 1,000 studies against it.
100%.
You know, at that point, you'll have, you know, polarizing topic. You'll have debates on either side. But training, nutrition, recovery mindset, I don't think anybody's arguing that ever. And that's why I love that type of stuff. Like, show me the things that were around 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and are going to be around for 100 years. Those are the big rocks you want to focus on. I think way too many people, and even in each one of those 4 individual categories, that's a big problem in our industry. Everyone, I call it majoring in the minor. Like, people will find this one little thing and then they want to focus on that. Like with nutrition, everybody's looking for the magic supplement. Oh, does this fat burner work? What do you think about intermittent fasting? What do you think about time-restricted eating? Should I
watch Game
Is
Changers?
it bad if I eat before bed? Like, those things, we can have a conversation about that, but I'd rather you spend 99% of your time focusing on the big rocks. Like, if more people just stayed hydrated and they spent more of their focus on hydration, eat more fruits and vegetables, eat lean meat, fulfill your protein requirements, eat more fruits and vegetables, make sure you're well hydrated. Like, those are the big rocks you should be focusing on, not whether it's bad to eat after 8:00 p.m. Like, that's in the grand scheme of things, that's so minute. Like, if you have the other stuff taken care of, what the time restricted eating and all, that stuff doesn't matter. That's 0.01% of the equation.
Yeah, because obviously we see, like, you can relate that to like people watching the Game Changers or doing carnivore diet seems to be a bit of a trend at the moment. So 100%.
Exactly.
Like just eating clean and doing the right thing and eating, the right portion sizes is going to get you the right results instead of trying to find some magic pill that you keep talking about.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see you too, Joe. Like, I mean, like I said, the amount of time that I've read your emails and then watched you online, like you've stuck to those principles the whole way through. Like, you haven't gone off track and gone off with some tangent with something else. You've always stayed true to those methods, you know what I mean? Which is, I remember your emails actually, they were pretty hard ass back in the day, man. Like, a couple of my clients that were on your email list, they were like, did you read Joe's email today? And it was like fucking get the work done, no excuses. Fucking, like, you're one of the first guys to really sort of
Meathead.
get that across the line, like just that hard ass approach.
Yeah, I try, and I've definitely, like, I don't want to say I softened up, but that might have been a little bit. That might have been a little bit of my way of trying to catch people's attention.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
It was awesome.
It wasn't an act either. Like, that's something I'm very proud of. If I go back and read an email of mine from 2002 or 2003, I didn't put much information out there that I wouldn't agree with today. Like, and I think that's why I've been around as long as I have, and have been able to make a living in this industry and provide for my family now for myself for the last 25 years, my family the last 10. But it's also why I don't have millions and millions of followers, because nothing that I say or do is that extreme, because I stick with the stuff that's tried and true and works. So yes, I have an amazing core following or audience, whatever you want to call it, but because I don't sell people any kind of magic pill, or I don't do any bullshit like crazy over the top marketing and overhype any of my products or programs, I don't have 5-10 million followers like a lot of people out there that have a 16th of my experience and knowledge and results, but they have bigger followings because they spent a lot of money in this extreme marketing and all this, the clickbait type titles on their YouTube videos. I just never got into that. I always genuinely just wanted to help people. I know it doesn't sound sexy, or I've been saying the same shit for 25 years, but I genuinely love training and helping people and sharing information. And I feel like I would be doing a disservice if I just tried to come up with some wild, crazy idea just to be different and catch people's attention. Yeah. Instead, I just put out helpful information, and that's kept me a very, very loyal audience for many, many years. But you also don't get to 10 million followers that way either. So, but I'll take it. I'll take what they say, 1,000 raving fans who know, like, and truly trust you, as opposed to some of these chicks on Instagram. They got 10 million followers, but it's a bunch of guys looking at their ass. I don't really need that.
In Russia, we're from Russia, and Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
100%.
There's a time and a place for everything, but that's not my gig.
Feeling you, mate. Mate, also, over the last 5 or 6 years in Australia, particularly, or I know of Australia, we've seen a big shift in women's sport. So there's a lot more soccer, a lot more rugby union and rugby league being played by women. They've also now got a professional rugby league competition that's been aired, which is fantastic in my opinion. Now, a lot of women, and even this is probably for the guys as well, would you say the women's strength program leading into their pre-season, because we're coming into pre-season now, should be different to a guy's or a man's program?
There's a few minor things I think you look at, but again, if we're looking at the big rocks, I think it's very similar. If male or female athlete or client, you still need to do the foundation, the core of your program should be those 6 or 7 foundational, fundamental movement patterns. Like, whether you're a man or a woman, you should be incorporating some type of a squat, some type of a hinge, some type of a lunge, an upper body push, an upper body pull. We always do some kind of sled dragging or loaded carries. That's with everyone, male or female. When the one thing we really maybe spend a little extra attention on with females are, you see a lot more non-contact ACL injuries, a lot more knee injuries with female athletes, just because of the Q angle, the angle from their hips to their knees. Women obviously are able to give birth. Men are not. They got that one on us. So structurally, most of them are going to be different, and that is why you see a lot of these ACL injuries. So we pay a little bit more attention to that, but it's still like, what do we do for that? You want to make sure you're developing the glutes and the hips and the hamstrings and focusing on eccentric and isometric strength before we just start, throwing them into a plyometric program and have them doing all kinds of sprints and jumps. It's build the foundation of strength with slow, eccentric, focused movement patterns, develop that strength, stability, control, then you layer on top of that some jumps and sprints and explosive work. But for the most part, I would say 95% of the programming looks the same, with a couple minor tweaks or just emphasis on certain areas that we see women are a little more susceptible to injury than men. And generally speaking, also, like upper body wise, most females won't have as much muscle mass in their upper body. Lower body, they're usually more developed, but upper body, like I've seen women respond a little bit better to higher reps, and not ultra high. I still think they should focus on strength, because most females still, they train too much, and I hate to just stereotype, but it's just what I've seen over 25 years. It's gotten a little bit better, but they train more for the feeling than the result. Like women, and to their credit, like to work hard. At least if you told me, like, or asked me, generally speaking, do female athletes work harder than male athletes, I would probably say yes. Not to piss the guys off, but the females that come into our gym, like, they work, like they want to get after it, but it's sometimes to a fault, because they think they need that feeling of, I'm about to throw up, I'm sweating, I'm tired, I need to train and feel the burn. And there's a time and a place for that stuff, but most females need to focus more on strength work. So it's not about the burn. In fact, that wouldn't be a goal at all of your training. If you're looking for strength and power, you're not really training in that energy system. We're more lower reps, and like I said, heavier weights and control. I think more women would benefit from training that way and using their results as an indicator, not just how tired they were at the end of the workout.
Yeah, 100%. Do you take into consideration like their menstrual cycle and everything as well when you're designing the program?
Yes, I meant to say that when we talked, when I mentioned the non-contact ACL injuries. During that time of the month, their joints, their tendons, ligaments are more lax. So you want to be mindful of that. And I know sometimes that's a little bit of a, some younger trainers might not feel comfortable. You just met somebody and you're having this conversation. But if you are a professional and you do this long enough, you realize that does make a difference. And a lot of those non-contact ACL injuries we see are happening at that time because their joints just aren't as stable. So programming wise, you need to know that. And that's why you might have heard me, I use the expression a lot for many different things. I say, write your programs in pencil, not pen. And this would be a perfect example. If we have, depth jumps on the workout today, an intense plyo workout, but it happens to fall during their menstrual cycle, you might want to call an audible and maybe switch to more, controlled strength training on that day or days, and then pick up the explosive stuff the following week. So little tweaks like that are things that you should be mindful of, yes, because that is a factor that matters.
Joe, I just had a quick question about your general programming over, say, like a year-long period. Do you generally start with a base of hypertrophy first, then build off that?
No, I would say, and I don't really have we really base our programs, now that I'm dealing with less athletes, it's way less volume, so I really could treat each athlete as an individual. I'm doing more one-on-one, two-on-one training. So every time I get a new client, we do a full assessment, go over their goals. I see what their starting point is. We go over the calendar, the timeline. How much time do I have for them to achieve that goal? And then the program is based on that. I don't have a set program that, you join my gym and you jump into that program. So everything's based on the individual, their goals, their starting point, and the time frame that we have. But with that being said, if I did have a style or a program that I find myself gravitating towards because I feel it produces the best results, it's more of a conjugate approach where we are training multiple different qualities throughout the year. So it's not just a hypertrophy phase. We're pretty much training some type of strength, hypertrophy, power, speed year round. But the way we do it is each phase would have an emphasis. So yes, if I, like with my NFL football players, if I get them right at the end of the season, they take a week or two off, and now they come back to me very early stages of the off season, yet I still consider that my programming style a conjugate approach because it's not a true block like linear periodization model. I'm going to have them performing some strength work, some hypertrophy. There might be some box jumps or low-level jumps or plyos in the workout, but I would emphasize slower, controlled hypertrophy type movements with a little bit of strength sprinkled in and maybe some power speed stuff sprinkled in the warm-up, just as like a CNS activation to fire up the nervous system before they start training. And then after a month or two, we will keep the hypertrophy in there, but that might now become more maintenance, and the strength will be a priority. And we'll try to develop strength while maintaining muscle. And then the strength, will go to more of a maintenance type dosage, and power and speed will become the main course, so to speak. So we're training multiple qualities all year long, but there's an emphasis on just one or two of those qualities with each of those little mini cycles we put together.
That's fantastic.
Joe, before we go, is there one piece of advice that you could leave us or our members or our listeners? If there was one piece of advice, what would it be, mate?
Be you. I would say don't try to emulate. Listen, I've been influenced by a ton of people, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a fine line with maybe someone listening and saying, hey, man, I love DeFranco's stuff. I've learned a lot from him. I modeled my gym after his. Like, that's great. That makes me feel very good. I'm super proud to be able to help people out and share information and maybe help fast track your success. Maybe you don't have to make all the mistakes that I made, but still be you. Like, be yourself. Don't try to completely copy any other person. And in fact, if whatever unique traits that you have that separate you from me or, you know, from you guys, I would highlight the crap out of that. Like whatever little difference you have, whatever unique attributes you have, highlight the hell out of that, and you will go far. And I say that because it's this industry, it's hard enough to make it in. We talked about the hours are way longer, the pay isn't as good as anyone thinks. If you're trying to be someone else all the time, if you're trying to act like Joe DeFranco, it's going to be freaking exhausting because that's not your personality. I could work 15 hours a day and it's going on midnight here, and I love doing this. I'm ready to do another podcast because I'm just being myself. Like, this is what I love to do. I'm me. If you try to act like someone else, that's exhausting, and that'll wear on you, and eventually you'll be exposed. So be 100% authentic at all times. Be yourself. Highlight your unique traits, and just live your passion. And life is way more enjoyable, and you will be way more successful that way.
100%, mate.
That's
Well
awesome,
said,
man.
Joe.
So
Well said. Well, mate, I know on behalf of the boys and everyone, it's been a pleasure, Joe. You're not just a great influence to us, but very humble, and it was a dead set pleasure having you on, mate. You're a true gentleman.
I appreciate that,
thank you very
guys,
much.
and appreciate you bearing with me with the time mix-up. I told you in the beginning, I know a lot about a little, and Australian time zones is one of the things I do not know about, clearly. So
man.
I'm glad we got this in.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much, Joe.
Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, mate.
nice talking to you, man. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Thanks,
So,
guys.
guys,
I appreciate it.
if anyone does want to follow Joe, it's DeFranco's Gym on Instagram. Is that right?
Yes, DeFranco's Gym on Instagram, and you could DeFrancosGym.com would also bring you
To
to
all
my
the
website,
certifications.
and you could see links to our certification, my podcast, all social media. You can find everything there.
Perfect, mate. Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, guys.
Thank you, man. Good speaking now.
Thank you.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
guys. Appreciate it.
Peace.